So a previously blinded Madeleine Stowe stars alongside Aidan Quinn in the thriller where what you can't see can kill you. So let's take a look in on this Michalak Apted directed film, Blank. Blinded at the age of 8 through a violent act by her mother, Emma Brody is now a violinist in the band, on the verge of regaining her sight. She's alerted that a set of donor eyes have become available, and while the surgeries are a success, her being blinded before reaching full visual maturity leaves her unable to clearly process what she sees. This is compounded by delayed visions, seeing things hours or days after the fact. This complicates matters when she inadvertently becomes a sole eyewitness to identifying the man who murdered her upstairs neighbor. This enters Chicago police detective John Hallstrom, who previously made a fool of himself shipping down in front of Emma weeks ago while she was still blind, to get her attention. Yet he fails to take Emma's suspicions any bit seriously, based solely on her unreliable eyesight. However, when he and Detective Tom Ridgely find the body, John starts trusting her more and more. While her vision continues to play tricks on her, a frightening encounter which injures her service dog Ralph spooks her further, but leaves further doubt in the minds of the police, as evidence is scarce, and a lineup identification goes bust. However, Emma and Detective Hallstrom are drawn closer and closer together through conflict and attraction, even when Dr. Pierce attempts to strike up a romantic relationship with her, but her feelings for John prove far stronger. As they become more deeply involved, another murder following the same pattern occurs in Milwaukee, where a particular cross is left at the scenes, which begins to force the pieces together. Still not trusting whether she's genuinely being stalked by a killer, or hallucinating a terror that's not there, Emma is manipulated into danger, as this twisted murderer wants to rip away her newly found sight forever. So arriving in US theaters on January 26, 1984, the New Line cinema-produced feature of Blank got about $21.7 million at the box office, but was produced on a budget of about $11 million, so wasn't that big of a standout success, but didn't garner mostly positive reviews from critics at the time. And screenwriter Dana Stevens, she actually garnered an Edgar Allan Poe Award nomination off of her screenplay for the film, and Stevens would end up following this up with the screenplay for the 1988 Nick Cage Meg Ryan film City of Angels, and more recently wrote the screenplay for the highly acclaimed film The Woman King, and would be working with the man who eventually became her husband for about a decade or so with director Michalak Apted, who is very much a highly acclaimed director, just the guy who got Sissy Spacek up to her Oscar win for Coal Miner's Daughter, got Sigourney Weaver yet another Oscar nomination for work in Gorillas in the Mist after she already got one for Aliens, and also in the same year for Working Girl. So guy's got a lot of talent, a lot of experience, a lot of seasoned qualities to really grasp a film and get a lot of great things on it. And also did the James Bond film The World Is Not Enough several years after this. But the entire kind of like real interesting thing in terms of Dana Stevens' screenplay here is that the condition affecting Emma Brody is kind of like the entire basis for the plot here. This sort of like delayed vision reaction to someone who's actually had this sort of eye transplant surgery is very much a real condition. She found that out and stuff like that, and found all the sort of medical information to kind of make sure that this was a real thing to integrate the plot, to not be kind of laughed off the screen. It was actually something that has a basis in reality here, so it works out so very well. And just the fact that there's such a great amount of talent involved with this film that I kind of found out as I originally kind of like discovered this on Netflix like ages ago. And it's like all these names kept popping up in the credits, like you got Brad Fiedel, who did the scores for The Terminator, Terminator 2, and the Fright Night films, and True Lies. He does the score in this whole thing. Dante Spinotti, the cinematographer. Regular worker with Michael Mann. He shot Manhunter and The Last Mohicans and Heat and The Insider. Fantastic cinematographer. There's like a lot of names popping up in this thing that's like, absolutely I grabbed a hold of this thing. I just really kind of gravitate towards this thing, just seeing there's a lot of people in this thing who just have an immense amount of talent adding to the entire thing, on top of a director who has that kind of credit and that type of pedigree to himself to know that this guy can really deliver something very fantastic here. And everything he had going on this whole thing from his direction is like, it's such a great one. The screenplay is so very well structured here, getting the whole thing where you kind of get introduced to Emma Brody as a character and going through the things that make her a relatable character, the charm that Madeleine Stowe brings to the character, but just getting introduced to the character before you get into the thriller aspects, but you kind of set up her plight, her condition, her situation, stuff like that to kind of rope you into being engaged with her character and then get roped into the entire thing with the thriller aspects of the murder mystery and all that type of stuff. It's a very well constructed thriller here with such a very smart screenplay and such a seasoned director who can weave all these elements together with the great performances, all the other things that he has at his disposal as a filmmaker here. And just talking about that Dante Spinotti cinematography in this whole thing, he does a wonderful job. Just like he brings so much particular character to the entire film, especially with the POV shots, where they have some digital manipulation involved with that thing, but still having a certain sensibility of using the POV shots as such great effect and using some very particular techniques to get some of that warped, distorted disorientation going on. Just a very good type of thing. And them shooting the whole thing in Chicago, just like he just adds so much character, brings the city to life. I like so much the different locations they have, the whole thing. They're just so very textured on a certain way. Someone who's very familiar with a lot of these locations, like Milwaukee and Damon's right there. You see in the film the old Double Door Liquors venue they had there, which apparently sadly shut down a couple years ago, but it's a fantastic venue for music and stuff like that. So it's like they're shooting right in an apartment right near that whole thing, and have that so much, a very much a dedicated part of the character of how the film looks and how it feels in such a way that he kind of leans into that so much. It feels very authentic to downtown Chicago. It just feels so great to see films like that. You had films like Above the Law and The Fugitive and Rapid Fire and a couple other things going on at the time, really utilizing Chicago in such great ways on screen. But it brings such a great, again, seasoned hand to how the cinematography of the film unfolds in the entire thing. They shot on Super 35 and met it down to 2.35 to 1, but if you go on a couple of streaming services right now, I think it's like Prime Video and some other things, if you're watching like Xfinity Stream or something like that, they kind of opened up the maths, so it's much more like 1.78 to 1 or something like that. So that's not the proper theatrical aspect ratio of the original DVD. And of course, a lot of the other streaming services do get the aspect ratio correct, so I don't know why there's different masters floating around in that regard, but the 2.35 to 1 is the original aspect ratio intended for the film, and the film just looks fantastic. A lot of stuff when you're in Emma Brody's apartment and that studio apartment and whatnot, a lot of warm lights and stuff like that, just very inviting type of things, but they utilize such the thriller aspect so well with the cinematography, how the light and shadow work off of different things here and there in the entire film, just looks spectacularly good. But I really like how they visualize Emma's sort of sensory disorientation and the vulnerability that comes along with that. She really can't trust exactly what she's seeing, so that creates a sense of fear, a little sense of anxiety in the whole thing. Really don't know exactly what's creeping around in these corners in the darkness, stuff like that. So really not sure exactly what's happening, but she's still terrified of these things happening. And they do such a great job to just get right into the psyche of the character in that regard. Just like this story really just required visualization so much. Some directors, cinematographer, filmmakers who just knew how to craft a visual that really kind of stands out so much. I think they did such a great job in that regard. Just like totally fantastic type of work from Dante Spinotti, nailing the hell out of this film. But talking about Brad Fiedel, just a guy who did some very iconic work over his career and just did some fantastic work in general, did craft a very good melodic ambient soundscape for the entire film, just did a very distinctive job to give this film a certain identity of its own. Not a wallpaper thriller score in any type of way, it's very much on its own here, showing that it has a certain quality about itself that does stand out amongst the pack here. Just like I thought he did a really good job. He has a very nice light theme for the film. It really kind of adds into that sort of atmosphere and stuff like that, but really does pump it up a little bit, kind of get a little heavier. We get into the thriller, kind of suspenseful moments in the entire film. Really does a fantastic job. They have a featured band in the entire film that Emma Brody is, of course, a part of in this whole thing called the Drovers. We're kind of this traditional Irish rock dance band in a certain way, kind of a very original type of thing. They kind of ran from about 1988 up to about 2002, and apparently actually contribute music to the film Backdraft before this. And Madeleine Stowe actually kind of learned to play the fiddle and the violin and stuff like that for the film, but she is not credited on the soundtrack whatsoever, so she did kind of like more or less pantomime in a certain way the entire thing in the entire films, but she did learn to actually do it to look authentic on screen and did some very good work on that regard to add the entire thing and to have this band step up and have a very prominent role in the entire film. So they probably got a little bit of a shine off this whole thing. not really my type of music, but I think they did a very good job in that regard. So it's very much, again, original and distinctive towards the ends of this film to really get that in the whole thing. So I think the entire original idea was like everybody was going to be like a poet or whatnot, but I think it was kind of a push towards getting her off to be much more of a musician and stuff like that. So it just adds a certain unique quality into our film here. So I just think that all works together so well. Brad Fiedel did a fantastic job, same as Spinati, just adding their own talents in the entire film to really make it very much lush and very much distinctive amongst all this other stuff. But talking about this entire cast here, starting with Madeleine Stowe, I just think she's absolutely outstanding in this entire performance. That she's pretty fresh off of Last of the Mohicans, so she's worked with the cinematographer previously, interestingly enough. But her portraying the character of Emma Brody here is a character, again, blinded at the age of 8 by her own mother's hand, and then apparently has been on her own since about the age of 15. So you can kind of see those textures and those layers in the character that she portrays so much, because she's got this assertive resilience about herself. She doesn't allow herself to be pushed over or dismissed or stepped on in any type of way. Just like when she's going up against Detective Hallstrom, he's kind of like all this speculative type of things, very cynical and stuff like that, and she just stands up to him completely. Just like this character, just like constantly throughout the entire film, as the entire relationship between her and Hallstrom develops, she keeps having that sort of assertive quality about her. So it's like she doesn't stand up for any bullshit or anything like that. She's like, she's a very good character in that regard, but she still has that trauma. She still has that vulnerability, constantly flashing back to that moment where her mother blinded her, smashing her through the mirror and stuff like that. So it's like all these little things still impact the character. They'll have a sense of vulnerability about her. She still has a certain fractured nature about her, where she's kind of like having all this surreal sensibilities about what exactly she's seeing and how she's able to react to everything. So it still creates this sort of instability and this sort of uncertainty within the character, that when she has this certain sequence in the entire film where she's going through the hospital parking garage, she thinks she sees the killer in this entire thing, where she sees the cross down there, which is kind of a telltale piece of evidence or whatnot. But once all the cops are there and they're looking into the situation, they don't find any evidence to back up what she saw. So it starts creeping in with all this self-doubt and stuff like that. So she has this really great sequence where Aidan Quinn's character of Hallstrom goes into her apartment and stuff like that. And she's like shrouded in all this darkness. She doesn't want to turn the light. She wants to think that she can't see again. All this type of stuff. It's a really good, heavily dramatic sequence that shows a lot of like anger and frustration with the situation, but also some friction there with Hallstrom. So it kind of builds up in such a great sequence there. But she does such a fantastic, powerful job in this entire film from beginning to end. Everything she's called on to do in this film, between some of the lighter moments where she's kind of worked with Laurie Metcalf there. She's playing her best friend in the whole film. Great job from her, but having some lighter moments there, and also dealing with all the sort of warped up sort of drama in the whole thing, between the romance, the love affair type of stuff going on there, and all the stuff going on with the thriller aspects. Just like everything she does is magnificently well done in this entire film, and she stands out extremely well in the whole film. Then you got Aidan Quinn stepping into the entire film here as Detective John Hallstrom, and Quinn already had a couple notable credits to his name at this point in time, including Desperately Seeking Susan. He was in Benny and June. Later go on to do films such as Legends of the Fall and Practical Magic, but already starred alongside Madeleine Stowe in the 1987 John Bam directed comedy Stakeout, which starred Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez. So very regular, working, reliable actor who did a lot of comedies, a lot of drama and stuff here, and they're just like really good, solid work on his career. And does such a really good job just setting the tone for this character right out of the entire film, because he's clearly this sort of almost dickish boys club cop, but he proves that he's a very good cop, despite his sort of fraternity sort of mentality of kind of like immaturity in some ways. He very much steps up to the plate when things get serious in the film. The investigation takes its turns. It really shows how good of a cop, how good of a investigator he is on the entire case here, showing his value as a police officer, and just moving the entire plot along in a very interesting way, and having great chemistry with Madeleine Stowe here. That everything goes on between those two characters. Again, it starts out with him being very cynical about the entire situation, and she's got this vision problem. She doesn't feel like she's a very reliable witness. He kind of throws her off to the side and stuff like that, but you get that thing growing through the entire film. Again, starting with this entire stupid-ass striptease he does at the beginning of the film, not knowing that she's blind, and trying to get her attention is a very immature sensibility there. But as everything kind of builds up and stuff goes on here and there, you see he's has those slight funny moments in the entire film here based off of that growing and changing sort of relationship between the two characters there, but he has such a great quality to bring to the entire film that does show the dramatic sensibilities that he has in himself and brings to this character of Hallstrom. That shows he's got dynamic nature to him. He's got dimensionality, all these different things, and everything kind of builds up from that, almost a sense of friction between Emma and Hallstrom here. They have all those banter moments the entire film. They're kind of batting it back around because they're both very strong personalities to a certain degree, and when she does this like line up that she can't identify who anyone is, and she actually identifies a cop that was in the other side of the town when the mirrors were happening, so he's clearly not the suspect, and he's kind of chewing her out in certain ways here and there, thinking that her vision had gotten better, because that's what she told him. But all these different things kind of twist back around here and there, and it still builds up to such a very sort of organic, romantic relationship in the entire film that really does have a great heart to it. How they're getting that off, and how the investigation keeps sort of almost like T-boning the entire situation. And when they're getting into a certain level of the entire relationship, something swerves it off to a certain degree, and certain crashes into it, and some things kind of fractured here and there, and there's so many great moments of just drama between the two of them involving both those aspects. So to do such a great job overall together in this whole thing, and just like how his character does kind of expand, it kind of grows a little bit as the film goes along, as the investigation kind of reveals more about each other. It really does a great job. Just like Quinn's fantastic, and he's joined up with his partner James Remar, who's just another guy, absolutely just one of the reliable and really fantastic actors out there, all the way back to The Warriors, 48 Hours, all the stuff he did with Walter Hill, an amazing body of work from him, and does such a great job as Detective Tom Ridgely here that I just like his quality. He just has that feeling that he's just a very grounded, concrete type of cop here that's trying to tether his partner back from going off on the deep ends of the relationship with the girl that he's investigating the case with and stuff like that. It's all these different things that you regularly would see, like you get shut out of the case and stuff like that, but the lieutenant is so dead set to make sure that they get this entire case locked down, because him and Ridgely know exactly what the entire thing is going on. They know the intimate details of the entire story here. So I like so much how everything kind of weaves together and creates drama and creates such a great sensibility with all the actors, and all the characters are weaved into our film. Just do a fantastic job. Such a great cast in this whole thing. You even have Paul Dillon, who ends up being the guy who's actually the stalker, the killer in the entire film. Does a fantastic job. Just taps in so much to a very creepy, intimidating sensibility. When you're just seeing in all these sort of distorted visions and whatnot, but they highlight so very well. And when you get up to the climax, it all very much pays off so very well in that regard. And I just want to do a little aside here, talking about where New Line Cinema was at this point in time, where they're just coming out of that sort of like low-budget B-movie horror sort of reputation, is starting to crest into this sort of like much more major studio player type of thing, where they're starting to acquire some smaller companies. Of course, they got acquired by Turner Broadcasting, then again, Time Warner, Warner Brothers, stuff like that. So they're really kind of stepping up their game so much. I think that's very much due to a lot of people that they brought in over the last couple of years before this, kind of getting up in a certain way to make sure that they were putting more money into things, being much more profitable, and getting things up to a much higher degree, where they're starting to do stuff like Seven with David Fincher, major film in '95. And of course, moving on from there, stuff like that, building up to all the work with Peter Jackson with The Lord of the Rings. So, very big stepping stones they're doing at this point in time. And just at the time this film was about to come to theaters, they were acquired again by Turner Broadcasting. So, much bigger types of things that are going on for them. But Blink is such a really good film. Just like one of these things, like I said, caught it on Netflix maybe like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. It's like, I always really liked it. I've watched this film so many times. I've just really enjoyed it so much that, like, such a good screenplay, such a good story here that really does have a very smartly crafted sensibility about itself, with great tension, very tight suspense in this whole thing. Just like everything that weaves into the story. It's like you can feel like, oh, the story might not kind of tie into Emma's condition here, but everything weaved into the story elements here and the motivations very much are tied into the whole thing. So everything's very tightly wrapped and so very well put together here that I think it's a fantastic piece of work that really does, like, I'm doing this video because I think it does deserve more attention. I've been wanting to do this for a lot of years now, and just like this felt like the right time to really kind of put the most effort into telling you guys about this film and really kind of propping it up to a certain degree. It's like, sadly, there's only a DVD release in terms of physical media, and of course VHS and Laserdisc before that, but they haven't done a Blu-ray release in the whole film. But as I said, it is available on HD through various VOD services. but you'd want to look on like Apple TV or I think Vudu or Movies Anywhere. They do have the proper 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio for the film that was screened theatrically. And I think it's very much the best one to go for. Just follow the intentions of the filmmakers there instead of like opening it up for whatever reason why they have that master there, whatever. But I think it's just a very good, smart thriller that did, like I said, get a lot of acclaim from a lot of people at the time. It's just very much well wrapped up in such a great way here that I love all the thriller sequences using that visual style of the POV shots that, and still has all these qualities about the film that does amplify things over and over again when you get into these higher and higher stakes sequences, getting up to the climax of the film. I think it's all extremely well executed. Everything on that regard, visually, auditory-wise, everything's put together in such a great way to just make the film up to its most potential in my regards. I think it's really, really well done. I think it's well worth checking out, guys. So if by chance you have checked out the film, I'd really like to invite your comments about what you felt about itself. Like I've always said, you can comment, subscribe, like, and share all the links around to really promote and expand this channel so much. And of course, there's always the Patreon to share something with you guys every single month for a little extra money to support the channel here. And of course, there's always a super thanks feature on anything we have here on the channel. Anything you like specifically, you definitely hit it up and give us a little extra support on that regard. But thanks so much, guys. I'll be back with another good stuff soon. So thanks much. Take care. Bye-bye.